Good afternoon, TEDxKazimierz Facebook Live viewers, and good afternoon, Michele.
Hello, hi, Richard.
Hi. So this is one of a series of interviews and conversations we've had with our former speakers, and Michele gave a tremendous talk on the 9th of June 2018 at the main TEDxKazimierz event with the theme of illumination. And the reason I invited Michele and Rena, the co-authors of the book The Happiest Kids in the World, onto the TEDxKazimierz stage was that they had a fantastic book and talk to give about the way that children are raised in Holland. But before we get onto that, Michele, could you reflect on your main feelings about the TEDxKazimierz experience? What are the things you remember the most? What was the most surprising thing? What was the most difficult thing? And any other reflections you'd like to share with our audience?
You know, I was absolutely terrified to give that talk. Somehow, especially knowing that it was going to be recorded, that made it a lot worse. But the thing that really surprised me was the warmth of the audience and their enthusiasm, and the fact that they were still awake. I was quite at the end of the afternoon, but they were still awake, and they all like really listened to my talk and paid attention, and they were really nice. I don't know if it's always like that, but yeah.
Okay, so just recapping the attention that you got. No, sorry, you said that. Well, the fear, and you do give talks from time to time, don't you?
I do, but they're not usually recorded.
That's right. Certainly, it's a very common thing for TEDx speakers and TED speakers, for that matter, to feel the sort of the weight of, it's not quite the weight of history, but there's this feeling that it's going to be recorded and forever for everyone to inspect.
It will follow you forever. Yeah. The mistakes you make, you can't get rid of them.
Yeah. And thank you for the comments about audience curation. By the way, if there anyone watching this Facebook Live, I'm beginning to see little things popping up showing people watching. There are 7 viewers already. Do feel free to leave a comment or a question for Michele. She's very willing to take questions, as am I, but she's the star of the show. So you talked about the fear, and you talked about the warmth of the audience and the fact they were still awake. Thank you for that. So, I mean, did people come up to you and talk to you, or did they just tell you, or was the way they clapped, or what, did you have conversations?
Yeah, I know people rushed up to me afterwards to talk to me. It was lovely. I was kind of overwhelmed. Yeah, it was really nice. Yeah.
Because we have something called audience curation. Many, not all TEDx's do, but many do. The idea of audience curation is that people who want to come to the event have to fill in a box on their application form saying, why should we get a ticket? Why should I get a ticket? So we sell it at below cost, but the idea is that that we get people who are most committed. The criteria we're looking for, which we're clear about, is people who are looking not just at what they can take from the day, but what they can bring to the day. So if they say they're a school teacher and they're going to tell their pupils about what they've heard, or if they're involved in some kind of positive social activity, that bumps them right up the queue. Okay, so we've had the fear and we've had the warmth. Maybe you could share a little bit of the tremendous difficulties you had actually getting to and from Krakow, because I think not everyone knows that, and it was mortifying and terrifying for us to think you might not make it. But why don't you tell our sympathetic audience about the difficulty you had getting to us here in Krakow?
Yeah, it was quite a close call. I didn't think I was going to make it either at one point. I flew with LOT Airlines, which is the Polish airline, and I had to get a connecting flight from Warsaw to Krakow, which was suddenly cancelled. And one of the airline staff said, "Everyone follow me," and people took off. They were just running after this man, LOT Airlines assistant. So I ran with them, and I was trying to call your organisers, your colleagues, to say, oh, I think I'm going to be late because there's no flights. I was running with all these passengers and carrying my wheelie suitcase, and we went down a flight of steps, and just so I talked to Alexandra, I think it was on the phone. I tripped, and I had one hand with the phone and one hand with my suitcase, and I fell all the way down. I fell all the way down the stairs, and landed like over the top of my foot. My foot just went like that. And the people around me just kind of picked me up and carried me with them. And someone else took my suitcase, and they said, you can't stop. We've got to get to this thing really quickly. And the place they were heading to really fast was the customer services desk, so that they could try and rebook on the next flight. But there was a big rush to get there, because it was first come, first served. And they knew, what I didn't know was that these queues could take hours and hours and hours. Anyway, I got there, and by the time it was my turn, there was no other way of getting to Krakow that day, apart from waiting for a bus. But the buses had all been sent to somewhere else in Poland with another flight that had been cancelled. So I ended up with a taxi, and so that was the thing, I missed the dress rehearsal. I couldn't really put any weight on my foot, which had swollen up to kind of elephant size. And I missed the dinner as well, which was a great shame.
Yes, and the dinner, in fact, your flight and the dinner were both paid for by the government by the Dutch taxpayers, in fact, because we, I have not exactly a bee in my bonnet. That wouldn't be the right way to put it. But the British Council, I ask them every year to give us financial support for the event, and they never ever do. I know they have supported some other TEDx's, so I take that very, very personally. And it's a matter of some irony that the Dutch government were happy to pay contribute towards a British speaker's cost, but we had Harriet Noble from the BBC World Service, and we had Mark McCurgo from Scotland this year, and we've always had some British speakers, but we've never got any money from the British Council. But the Dutch, I tweeted their embassy in Warsaw saying we've got the authors of the book The Happiest Kids in the World, and I got a phone call the next day, and a very nice man called Patrick ran through the criteria and said, yes, we know about this book, and we'd be happy to help. So your painful journey here and the dinner you missed and your painful journey back were all paid for by the Dutch. So thank you, people of Holland from TEDxKazimierz. And apart from that, your journey back wasn't peaceful either, was it?
No, again there were problems with the planes, and I got stuck for 8 hours in a queue in the airport to rebook to actually leave Warsaw going back. I had to spend the night there and couldn't fly again until the next day, so it was like a 24-hour delay.
Yes. So and we felt so sorry for you. In fact, I think I can't remember whether it was flowers or chocolate.
It was flowers and chocolates, but they arrived at my house before I did. So I don't know what flight they took.
Yes, but it was rather shocking to think that a present, a present of sympathy from TEDxKazimierz arrived before you did. But I did actually buy it online via a service in Holland, so it wasn't.
Okay, that's how it worked.
It wasn't actually posted from Poland. A courier got there first. But also maybe you could talk about the speaker preparation process, because that was something that I was quite involved in, but I'm always curious to know what it's like from the speaker's point of view, because and maybe you could describe it for our audience.
Well, what did we do? We started with Skyping, I think, didn't we? And then prepared a draft, and then went through it on Skype a couple of times. But it's a very guided process. You get help writing your speech and revising it, and making sure that it's the right timing and the right build up, and it says the right things, really, that it gets its message across. Yeah. I mean, it was a really good kind of backup and support.
Yes, I mean, I think, because you and Rena, maybe you can actually, perhaps you should also introduce Rena, who's not on this call, because there are reasons why there's reasons why she's not here now, and there was a sad reason why she wasn't on the stage.
Yeah, not that sad. I mean, she's having her third baby and probably having it this week, so hopefully there'll be an announcement soon. But yeah, no, she had a difficult pregnancy. So that's right.
But you did contribute. If you click on the link click in the link on the description of this conversation. This is for our viewers. You can watch the talk, and there's some inserted video that Rena recorded, and we sort of embedded our technical people, Taras and Oleg, embedded that into the talk, so she could contribute. And I think so. In terms of your experience, you had the preparation, you had the traumatic journey here and back. You liked the people, and you were very frightened. You're very frightened. Yeah. Interesting. I told you don't know this, but I told you asked if you could have a lectern, and you had a lectern.
Yeah, well, I couldn't like walk around like I'd been planning on. I had to like lean on something so I didn't have my weight on my leg.
Yes, and at this year's main TED event in Vancouver in Canada, obviously, one of the speakers was reading his speech from a lectern, and there was some people we have a feedback process, and the feedback was overwhelmingly positive, but someone said it's not as professional as TED to have a lectern. And, and TED actually absolutely emphasized. They say, if the speaker's comfortable having it from memory, that's good. But the most important thing is the idea, and it wasn't. And I quite often it's a kind of backup that people are so nervous that they want to have the speech there just in case. And again, for those who are watching who don't know that much about TED and TEDx, the tagline of TED is "Ideas Worth Spreading," and the most important thing about what you and Rena contributed to the conference was obviously your great personalities, but it was about the ideas. The TEDx's are about the ideas. And for anyone watching who wants to help us, if you can share this, we're doing this partly so that Michele and Rena's talk gets more views. So if you can share this on your different, if you've got a social media group or a profile that has a bit of traffic, please do just share this by clicking on the share button underneath your Facebook Live. Now, but as TED and TEDx are about ideas worth spreading, perhaps you could try in a few words to explain the idea that brought you to the TEDxKazimierz stage.
Well, I've brought up two children. I'm still bringing up two children in the Netherlands, and they are now 11 and 14. And Rena is. Oh, I'm getting comments up there. Hello. Anyway, Rena's got two children and about to have her third. And we noticed something about Dutch parenting that was a lot more inspiring and refreshing than the kind of parenting we're used to in Britain and America, which is a little bit, hands-on, over-concerned. Everyone wants to do their best, but to the extent where children don't have really the kind of freedom to grow up and make mistakes and learn that way. So we wrote a book about that. Shall I show it?
Yes,
I have one here. If you can see it, you probably can't see it in the camera. Yes, now you can.
It works.
Yeah, and it's in Polish, which is also really beautiful.
Very good.
Yeah. Anyway. What we wanted to say was we wanted to reassure parents that they didn't have to do everything and spend all their time and energy trying to raise their children in the best way, to kind of slow down, take a look at what they were doing, and to trust their children, give them a little bit more freedom, and kind of be inspired by the Dutch way, which produces the happiest children in the world. That was where it all started, with kind of UNICEF research that showed that. Yeah.
Yes, so certainly we felt I felt here in Poland that there's this sort of overprotectiveness. There's sort of the definition of a good parent is the parent who sacrifices themselves for their children, and there's this concept of Matka Polska, the Polish mother who does everything. And it sounds to me like, to some extent, that's not a uniquely Polish approach. You'd say that it's quite common in other countries as well.
Yes, definitely, it's a trend in parenting to be very hands-on and protect your children from risk, and to be very worried about risk was one of the things. Yeah.
Yes, and do you, when you put, and so anyway, what would you say the key ingredient? Obviously, we don't want you to repeat you could just repeat your entire talk, but
no.
Telegraphically, what would you say? What are the key points of the Dutch approach?
Let children learn by making mistakes. Teach them to be independent. That's a kind of guided process. So you don't just suddenly say, go off and live your life. You supervise them in, for example, learning to ride their bikes and then taking long. Give them good sexual education, so that they know what to do, so that they're prepared, so they're more likely to use contraception, more likely to be able to set boundaries. What else we got? Cycling, school, less pressure to succeed, so a less competitive environment, more cooperation, working together, learning to work as a team. Less homework at primary school. I think that's a really big one. My children didn't have any homework at primary school, and I think that made them very happy. But it also gave them time to learn through play, and there's a lot that can be learned through play, more than through forcing children to read too early, for example, or learn in a too structured environment when really they just want to discover things for themselves.
Yes, and you know, as I remember, as you opened your talk, you said, you know, imagine, because we've got quite a young demographic. We do have some people, you know, we certainly have some parents in the audience, but our general demographic are people who probably haven't had children yet. And you asked if you imagine you were going to have a child, and because I think your original opening is, what sort of world do you want for your children? And if 90% of the people there don't, what sort of life do you want to have for your children? And if people don't have children, I said, imagine you're going to have children, which you might have children, which includes almost everyone. Then you said that, you know, you'd imagine that most people want their children to be happy, and it's about not trying to do everything for them, isn't it? And but what about the issue of crime? That I think crime and road safety, because a lot of people, I think, intuitively feel, yes, it's all very well to let your children go off and do things independently, but the streets are so dangerous, and there are so many different people out there. I'd never forgive myself if something happened to them, and that must have been an issue. That must be an issue that Dutch people also have to face.
You're confronted with it all the time. For example, my daughter, who's at secondary school now, sometimes she has projects on the other side of Amsterdam, and she has to cycle through the centre, find her own way. Your instinct is to take your child and not to let them do that on their own. Of course, you want to say, well, I'll take you there, and then we'll get there safely. But it's better to just sit down and talk through the journey, and make sure that your child's aware of things that might be dangerous on the way, like dangerous junctions, or particular things to watch out for, or tourists wandering around the place on the bike paths. That's a common problem in Amsterdam. So instead of stopping them, like, prepare them so that they do it themselves in the safest possible way.
That's right. And you mentioned the cycle lanes, and obviously, you know, it's a well-known fact that Holland has excellent infrastructure for cycling, and you actually talk about biking. You talk about biking in the talk, and it's not just biking in the rain. And why would biking in the rain be good for kids? I mean, they get cold. Where's the benefit in that?
Because they'd all rather be driven to school, of course, or get on a warm bus if you're not going to drive them. But learning to just get out there in whatever kind of weather it is a good way of teaching grit and resilience. And resilience is one of the things that makes people happier in life. So it's really good for them. They do just stop saying, oh, can't you give me a lift, or can I get the bus? They don't even think twice. My son went off this morning all packed up in his cycling trousers and all his waterproof clothes on, and it just becomes like the normal thing to do, instead of, oh, have I got an option of how to get to school or whatever, can I do it another way to kind of not get wet? But they dry off at school.
Skin is a waterproof ultimately as well.
Skin is waterproof underneath, yeah.
And I think the point about teaching kids to be tough and resilient and self-reliant is really important, because definitely, I can't remember who wrote the book, but there certainly is a book talking about how grit and determination are among the most important factors in being successful. But we also I think discussed the issue of what it means to be successful and what it means in Dutch society to be successful. And I don't know, perhaps you'd like to reflect on what the Dutch view is and whether it matches your British perspective or Rena's American perspective.
Well, one of the things that Rena and I talked about in the writing process was the differences between England and America. And we felt like that England was kind of ruled by class and America by money. So in England, you want to rise up in class-wise, so you want your child to go to a good school and a good university and all that kind of stuff. But in America, you want your child to be rich, because that's going to give them the best possible access to like healthcare and all those kind of things you don't get from the state there. In Holland, it's a more egalitarian society, so there isn't such a big gap between like rich and poor people, or there isn't such a strong. There is a class system, but it's not like the one in England. So everyone's not kind of striving for kind of a higher status, or there's less kind of status anxiety, and there's more personal fulfillment. So you should be happy doing what you want to do, rather than it being a specific thing or route to kind of some kind of other success. I don't know if I'm making sense, but
no, I mean, I think most people watching this won't have lived in Holland, and Holland's obviously got this reputation of being free and easy and liberal, and people talk about the druggy scene in Amsterdam, but you also but Holland is obviously much more than that. People are, but in fact, despite this lack of materialism in the way children are raised, it's not that Holland is a poor society. You talked about the economics of it, didn't you?
The economics, everyone is recent. Yeah, I mean, it's a reasonably wealthy country, of course. So, but it's the gap. It's the gap between rich and poor, and that's the thing that comes back in happiness studies. That the smaller the gap, so the less you have to envy, the happier you are. So if you're a very poor person living around rich people, you're going to be very unhappy. But a fairly rich person living around even richer people, again, you've got the problem. So, the idea of getting everyone on the same level and not seeing who's got the kind of flashiest car or whatever. Everyone on a bike.
Yes, and I just flashed up a link to the blog post. I'll do it again.
Rena's blog post. Yeah,
Rena's blog post, because until then you didn't really know each other, did you? She was blogging independently of you, and that's
book... right. Yeah, and a publisher put us together. She saw the blog post. Ann Feldman, she's an editor in England and originally Dutch, and she already noticed herself the differences between the way children were being raised in England and the way I'd moved to Holland to have my kids here, because I thought it was better for them too. So it all kind of came together. Yeah, with all those Dutch links.
That's right. Okay, so and just thinking of other aspects of things about the book that maybe the sex education you didn't talk. Obviously, a TEDx talk is extremely short, isn't it? You don't have time.
Really short and compact, and you can't say everything. You have to choose like maybe 20% of what you have to say, really.
But you did mention that the result of having good sex education and open conversations with children actually have positive health outcomes. Maybe you could share what those are.
Yeah, fewer teenage pregnancies, fewer STDs, more likely to use a condom the first time they have sex. So they're all things that make children safer through awareness, and they actually are losing their virginity later than countries where children are not given access to all this kind of information.
Yes, so basically knowledge is power. Perhaps you'd like to share the tip I gave you if you thought people might be dozing off. Well, the concept of the nerve word. Could you explain what you thought, and what you said?
Well, we had to put something into the talk because it was like at 4 o'clock in the afternoon, so everyone would be digesting their lunch and kind of dozing off, we thought. And the idea was it was a kind of wake up word, and wake up words apparently like sex and violence words. So we had I think we had syphilis or gonorrhea. Did we have gonorrhea?
I think it was chlamydia and gonorrhea.
Chlamydia and gonorrhea.
And said that positive impact on reducing levels of STD, and I said, well, there's an opportunity to wake people up
by naming the STDs they could get. Yeah,
naming them. That if you weren't paying much attention at the beginning of that sentence, by the end of it, you'd for sure be woken up for a moment. No, that's just one of those little tricks. And in terms of any impact doing the TEDx talk has had on you or Rena, have there been any consequences? Obviously, your talk has only gone online in the last few days, but have you noticed any change or impact on your life, positive, negative, or none whatsoever?
I still got a really sore ankle. So that's not quite better yet. I actually got approached by someone from TEDx in the Netherlands last week, but I think it was complete coincidence because I didn't actually know about this.
Yes, if you're a TEDx organizer, it's slightly like being a publisher or a journalist, that you want to get to speakers first. I mean, in my view, I mean, some TEDx's are a bit competitive, but we're organising a meeting here in Kazimierz in Krakow on the 8th of October, which is a meeting about TED and TEDx, where we've got different TEDx organisers. We'll be sort of doing an FAQ and taking questions and explaining what the whole thing is, because a lot of people, before they get involved, they somehow, it's a bit like a TV station. You can't quite imagine what goes on behind the scenes in order to create the event. You see the videos, but you don't understand the process. So certainly we feel there's need to educate people, and you got educated the hard way, I guess.
It was a really good process learning to write the talk, and I've taken away some great tips for ways to structure other talks that I'll give in the future. I think that's always really handy. Yes,
well, I mean, the approach I have quite a personal approach. I always say kick off with the idea, and then because I think the emotional content of a short talk is important, which isn't like being a Baptist preacher sort of wailing and shouting and screaming and praying on stage, but just sort of figuring out why your ideas are important to you, why they should be important, why they are important to the audience, and then why you're the right person, why now is the right time, and obviously if there are any calls to action. But I certainly encourage and do encourage, if anyone watching this among our Facebook Live audience knows anyone who's either having children or has had children recently, share the book with them. Obviously, if your children have all left home, there's a limit to what you can do with the knowledge for yourself. But you can
grandparents.
You can be grandparents. That's true.
Grandparents like the book too. Yeah.
Or also maybe you can reflect and you can compare. Maybe you can learn from the things you got wrong, and or else you can challenge the ideas, and at least you've got something to disagree with if you're going to stick in your ways. Okay, Michele, I'm trying to think if there's any. Is there any final message you want to give to the TEDxKazimierz and wider audience, apart from the obvious message, which is to watch the talk and buy the book?
Watch the talk and buy the book, and I would encourage people to work with you in the future on TEDxKazimierz. Yeah, I think it's a really good platform and a nice team. Yeah.
Thank you. Well, I had a meeting with someone from the city of Krakow, from the town hall yesterday, and if we want it, we can get some space in City Hall, which is a rather grand. It's a smaller venue, but we're planning smaller events. We might have an event to do with smart cities. We're certainly having a TEDxKazimierz women event on the 8th of December. So we're looking out for female-run organizations, female-run NGOs, which are targeted at helping women, which doesn't mean not helping men. So there was an excellent talk at TEDx Youth at Warsaw by two young girls saying that everyone has to be a feminist, that you can't leave feminism to the girls, because
absolutely not. No, I have a son who's a feminist. I'm glad to say.
Congratulate him and say that it's admirable. And it's not just admirable, it's important, and it shouldn't be an issue, but it is. Okay, Michele, well, we are going to wrap this in just a moment. Thank you for your good wishes. Thank you for the time you've devoted after the event. I would like to know that your ankle gets better finally. It's a long time. It's a long time. If anyone, I see David McGeer who posted these, enjoyed your talk. If anyone has questions or things they'd like to contribute, you can have a debate on our Facebook page. And apart from that, I'm going to say greetings and goodbye from Kazimierz and TEDxKazimierz in Krakow, and give Michele the chance to say goodbye as well.
Okay, bye-bye. Thank you. Bye.
Bye.